This is the case that changed everything about modern manhunts. What happened in that courtroom would send shockwaves through digital forensics. One floppy disk became a confession without speaking, and a decade of silence ended in handcuffs. Welcome to Gavel Files, where justice tells its story. Today we examine the case of State of Kansas versus Dennis Lynn Rader. It is a story of control, attention, and consequences. It is also a lesson about evidence that remembers. According to court documents, Dennis Lynn Rader lived a double life in Kansas. He was a compliance officer in Park City. He was also a church council president and scout leader. He was a husband and a father of two. Yet prosecutors argued that he was also BTK. Court documents reveal the name BTK came from his method. Bind, torture, kill, he wrote, like a signature. Between 1974 and 1991, at least 10 people died. They died in and around Wichita. The evidence showed the killer staged scenes for his own satisfaction. According to testimony, the killings were not impulsive explosions. They were planned intrusions into ordinary homes. Victims were watched, selected, and approached with deception. Some were bound with rope, cord, or belts. Then the violence became intimate and methodical. The state of Kansas did not just face a murderer. It faced a ghost with patience. For years, leads went cold, and families waited. Then the silence itself became part of the terror. People wondered if he was dead, imprisoned, or simply finished. According to court documents, the quiet ended in 2004. Letters began arriving again, taunting police and media. Packages included clues, photocopies, and claims of hidden trophies. Some messages carried his symbol and a demand for attention. He wanted the city to remember him. The incident that triggered the legal avalanche was not one murder. It was the decision to re-enter the spotlight. Prosecutors argued that his arrogance created his exposure. He began communicating with news outlets in Wichita. Each contact was a thread investigators could pull. According to testimony, he asked police a chilling question through a message. Could a floppy disk be traced back to him? The response was crafted to lure him. "Rex, it will be okay," the message said. And he believed it. Court documents reveal a purple Memorex floppy disk arrived at KSAS-TV. It came in February of 2005. The disk contained a document with deleted metadata. The evidence showed a link to Christ Lutheran Church. It also showed a username, Dennis. But what happened next would change everything. Investigators treated the disk like a crime scene. The evidence showed the file had been last modified on a church computer. Prosecutors argued that this was not coincidence. It was a digital fingerprint left by carelessness, and it gave detectives a place to look. According to court documents, attention shifted to Dennis Lynn Rader. He fit the age range and lived in the area. He had access to the church computer system. He also had a history of control roles in the community. Detectives began surveillance and background checks. Court documents reveal the next step was biological proof. Investigators sought a familial DNA comparison. They obtained a sample connected to his daughter. The evidence showed a match to crime scene material. It matched semen and fingernail scrapings from victims. Prosecutors argued that the science closed the circle. The defense maintained that procedure and collection mattered. Yet the match was powerful and consistent across evidence. According to testimony, it linked him to the killing of Vicky Wegerle. It also supported links to other unsolved murders. The state of Kansas moved fast. Court documents reveal the filing of multiple murder charges. 10 counts of first-degree murder stood at the center. Additional allegations included aggravated kidnapping and capital murder theories. The case was built for a trial, but the facts pressed inward. The grand jury returned an indictment on the murders that had haunted Wichita. Each count carried a name, a date, and a story. Families who had lived with uncertainty saw official words on paper. The defendant was arrested and brought before the court. Judge Gregory L. Waller presided. Pre-trial proceedings began under intense public attention. Prosecutors, led by District Attorney Nola Falston, prepared a mountain of exhibits. The defense was led by Steve Life. The defense maintained that the process must remain constitutional. The judge ruled on scheduling and protective orders. According to court documents, the court also considered the unique nature of the evidence. Letters, photographs, and communications had to be authenticated. Digital media required careful handling and explanation. The evidence showed a pattern of taunting and self-documentation. It was not just murder, but theater. The case never reached a traditional trial phase. Yet the courtroom still carried trial-level weight. According to testimony, the plea hearing became a public accounting. The state would not allow vague admissions. The judge demanded factual bases for each count. And the defendant complied in detail. Drop a comment. Do you think the verdict was fair? And then the prosecution revealed their key evidence. Court documents reveal the floppy disk became the pivot point. Prosecutors argued that metadata tied the disk to the church. The evidence showed the username Dennis within the file properties. It placed the communication inside his daily life. It turned an anonymous killer into a specific man. According to testimony, detectives compared his movements and history to case timelines. They also reviewed his prior contacts and interest in police work. The evidence showed he inserted himself into systems of authority. That pattern matched the letters, which demanded recognition. It also matched the cruelty of control. If this case is gripping you, hit that like button. The prosecution presented documentary evidence from the taunts. Letters described bindings and fantasies in detached language. Packages included photos and Polaroids meant to prove authorship. The evidence showed knowledge only the killer could possess. Prosecutors argued that he was reliving the crimes through mail. According to testimony, the plea hearing on June 27, 2005, turned graphic. Rader spoke without visible emotion. He described approaching victims, restraining them, and killing them. He described how he selected targets and entered homes. The courtroom heard details families had feared. One line cut through the room like a blade. That is part of my deal. I got to have them. According to testimony, he said it to a victim during an attack. It revealed motivation, not confusion. It was about domination, not accident. The judge listened, and the record grew heavier. The defense strategy had little room to maneuver. The defense maintained that a trial could inflame the community. They also focused on avoiding the death penalty exposure. They did not dispute the existence of the communications. Instead, they navigated toward a plea outcome. It was damage control, not exoneration. According to court documents, the plea required him to admit each murder. The judge ruled that each count needed a clear, factual statement. The defense maintained that mental health history should be considered at sentencing. But the admissions were coherent and deliberate. The state argued he understood every act. The jury had heard enough, but they were not ready for this. There was no jury to weigh guilt, because the plea removed that stage. Yet the court still performed a careful legal ritual. Prosecutors argued that the public deserved a full narrative. The defense maintained that restraint was necessary. The judge balanced openness with the dignity of victims. Closing arguments became unnecessary in the usual sense. Still, each side framed what the plea meant. Prosecutors argued that it was accountability, not mercy. The defense maintained it was acceptance that spared families a longer trial. The courtroom absorbed the truth in measured sentences. The law moved toward finality. After deliberation, the foreman stood up. There was no foreman because there was no deliberating jury. The verdict was embedded in the plea. Guilty on all counts, the court confirmed. The defendant stood, expression controlled. Families reacted in different ways, some weeping, some still. The judge spoke with careful authority. The judge ruled that the convictions would stand on 10 murder counts. He imposed 10 consecutive life sentences. Court documents reveal no parole eligibility for 40 years. The sentence was designed to keep him imprisoned for life. It also ensured each victim was recognized in punishment. In the aftermath, appeals were pursued and denied. The evidence showed the plea was knowing and voluntary. The judge ruled the record supported the convictions. Prosecutors argued that the investigative methods were sound. The defense maintained concerns, but courts upheld the outcome. The case settled into history. The legal impact reached far beyond Kansas. Court documents reveal training changes in digital evidence handling. Metadata recovery from a floppy disk became a cautionary tale. The evidence showed how small digital traces can identify a suspect. Agencies emphasized preservation, documentation, and forensic imaging. Cold cases learned to listen to machines. Where are they now? Nola Falston later retired from public service. Court documents reveal she passed away in 2024. Dennis Lynn Rader remains incarcerated at El Dorado Correctional Facility. As of 2026, he is 80 years old. The community still carries the scars. The state of Kansas versus Dennis Lynn Rader reminds us that justice is never simple. Share this video with someone who cares about justice. Drop a comment with your verdict. Guilty or not guilty? Hit like and subscribe to Gavel Files for more cases where justice tells its story. Next week, we examine another case that shook the nation.